My name is Alina Adams. I was born in Odessa, USSR. I wrote 2 books set in the Soviet Union. My daughter was born in America. I'm going to tell her about the Soviet experience through books.
Today's book for learning about the Soviet Union, Something Unbelievable by Maria Kuznetsova.
I haven't read these books yet, so I'm going to ask you some questions to see should I read them, right? In this book, I saw that there are 2 characters. There's Larissa and Natasha. Now, one thing that's very important is who do you think would make the better borscht?
In Something Unbelievable, Natasha is the granddaughter and Larissa is the grandmother. So by definition, the grandmother is going to have a better borscht recipe because she has spent much more time making borscht. And because in Something Unbelievable, the grandmother actually, when she's young, the family during World War II, they evacuate and they don't have a lot of food. So the grandmother really knows how to make ingredients stretch. Whereas Natasha, who's lived most of her life in the United States, probably just buys like some canned beets and puts some ketchup in it and calls it borscht. So I think it's no contest. The better borscht would go to Larissa.
I'm thinking.
Okay.
I'm a thinker. Wait, she's an actor?
Yes. Okay, so this is one of the interesting parts. So the character in Something Unbelievable, the younger generation, Natasha, she's an actress. And one of the things she finds out is that the only roles people want to see her for are like Russian prostitutes. And then when she does a Russian accent, some people think it's not an authentic Russian accent. And that's something that I think happens all the time. Like when I worked at ABC Sports, I would sometimes dub the Russian-speaking skaters, I would dub them in English, but if I did it in good English, they would say, no, that doesn't sound right, so I'd have to dub it with a Russian accent. So that's actually something really interesting in this book. The concept is that if you're in any kind of field where you go to someone who knows nothing about the subject and you do a real Russian accent, they'll go, no, that's not right. Could you do more like a Rocky and Bullwinkle moose and squirrel thing?
Wait, so they also have weekly Skype chats?
Yes. This is actually one of the fun things about it. Because remember during the pandemic, how we would have these scheduled weekly Skype checks? Well, okay, there's no pandemic here in this book. I think it's pre-pandemic, actually. But yes, Natasha talks to her grandmother every week on Skype, and her grandmother ends up telling her her life story, which is something really cool because it's the kind of thing where you wish you had asked people, you wish you had said, tell me about what your childhood was like. And one of the things that I find really interesting is when you ask deep, profound questions, like, tell me how you felt about the Cuban Missile Crisis, or tell me how you felt about World War II, or the Berlin Wall coming down, or whatever, you get these, it was fine, it was life, I did this, I did that. Whereas I find if you ask really, like, simple question, like, what did you eat for breakfast every day, or what was your favorite dress that you ever had when you were little, you actually get better answers because you start with, well, I had kasha for breakfast, but on Wednesdays we couldn't get kasha because we had to go to the market, and that's when Boris, who works at the market, would say, well, you should go over there. So that's the cool thing about Something Unbelievable is she's asking her grandmother questions to tell her her life story, and sometimes you don't know what questions you're going to ask that are going to get you the best answers.
Slide.
Slaysky. Slay's Russian. That's Russian for slide.
Is this book told at like 2 different sections of the 2 different stories, or is it like intermingled?
Intermingled. Yeah, well, it's the kind of thing where we get Natasha's perspective when she's asking her grandmother about her past, but then when her grandmother starts telling the story, it's from the grandmother's point of view. So it's actually pretty clear. Now, my father, your grandfather, he says he doesn't like stories where there's 2 different timelines, but I think this one is actually really clear. You know who's talking, when they're talking, and the difference is Natasha is narrating in the present, but Larissa is narrating from the past. So she's an adult looking back on her experience, whereas Natasha's living it in the moment.
Okay, I'm following.
You're following. Yeah, as I said, it's very clear. It's very easy to follow.
Lightning round. Is this book more character-driven or plot-driven?
I don't think you can separate the 2 because character leads to plot and plot reveals character. In this book, you find out a lot about the characters based on what the plot is.
Strong character development on a scale from 1 to 10.
Natasha doesn't develop as much, but that's just because Natasha is not very bright and she's a spoiled American, so she kind of wants everything her way. But Larissa, you see her as a child, and then you see her as an old woman, so you really get a sense of how she became who she is.
Now, are these characters lovable?
Well, are Russian immigrants lovable? I think that's a much larger question, and we'll do a separate video on the topic, but they're likable.
Likeable, okay. So you won't be like, I really like this story, but this character, I just want to punch her in the face.
Right, like how I feel about Catcher in the Rye. Like, I think it's really well written, and Holden Caulfield is really well developed, but he's a horrible human being, and I would never want to be around him. No, it's not that.
Okay. Are flaws of the character the main focus?
That's a really good question, because somebody actually wrote a review of my previous book, My Mother's Secret, a novel of the Jewish Autonomous Region, where they specifically didn't like the fact that I pointed out the flaws of the characters who happen to be women. Now, I believe that women can have flaws. Do you believe women can have flaws? Women can have flaws. And so this book has women in it, and they do have flaws, but that doesn't take away your enjoyment of the story.
We love fully developed women characters.
Who have flaws.